Condo owners are under immense pressure from new inspection regulations and having to put money aside for expensive repairs. This plus insurance is significantly raising monthly fees for owners. Lawmakers are now looking at how to possibly provide relief for condo owners. Let's go on the record.
From WPBF 25, this is On the Record with Nathalie Pozo.
Good morning and thank you for joining us. Following the deadly Surfside condo collapse that killed 98 people in 2021, new safety measures were introduced. This included inspections and reserve funds for any repairs. The Structural Integrity Reserve Study had a December 31st, 2024 deadline. This plus insurance is significantly raising monthly HOA fees for owners, and that's on top of a mortgage payment. Just last week, Governor Ron DeSantis called for a special session to address this issue.
One piece of legislation was just not going to be able to solve all the problems. We're now seeing some problems that I think were unintended that have popped up, and we have a responsibility to act to make sure that people can stay in their condo units. The legislature should not be doing anything that's going to cause someone to have to flee.
Joining me now is State Senator Jason Pizzo. He is part of the Regulated Industries Committee looking into some of the issues following the Surfside regulation. Senator Pizzo, thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
I want to jump right in because we do have limited time this morning, but I know this is a very deep topic. You represented Surfside's district at the time of the collapse. When this mandate was put in place, we know it was to provide safety to people living in condos. Did lawmakers think it would have these kind of results, forcing so many people to feel like they have to sell their condos in order to make payments?
So not for me, and everyone was sort of eyes wide open, knowing what the regulations and the requirements were going to, how it was going to pan out. And quite simply, it should come as no surprise, especially to those in my district in Southeast Florida, because it's no different than the recertification program for condominiums that have existed for a generation in both Miami-Dade and Broward. Effectively, our bills just rolled out the same uniformity for inspections and now actually putting some teeth in statute. The idea of reserves has been in statute for years. It's just also gave the ability for condos just to continue to waive it and forget it and defer maintenance and kick the can. So none of these components should come as a surprise to lawmakers, especially because these are in place in Miami-Dade again, and as well as Broward. I filed the parts as it relates to transparency and accountability 6.5 years ago, and then again 5 years ago, and no one really paid attention. I'm the only one of the 40 in the Senate, in the Florida Senate, that lives in a condo. So I get it that 39 of my other colleagues probably not front of mind for them. It took 98 people dying in my district before people started paying attention to condos in Tallahassee.
Senator, so we heard from the governor earlier this week where he talked about having a special session in place to bring relief for people who own condos. You're also part of a committee that met earlier this week as well to try and provide some relief. What kind of relief are we talking about? Because this is really putting a lot of pressure on owners.
So this is actually, Nathalie, the third condo bill, which contains very similar components. And each iteration has sort of gotten less severe. And when I say it's the third, it's because the crux of the bill and the requirements that are now in law were extended an additional year last year. And it comes to the point where you just can't keep pushing these things back. So when the governor was in his press conference was talking about how, this isn't verbatim, but paraphrasing, but basically says the legislature goes and passes something that has an effect that may result in displacing people. Really, the legislature has allowed insurance companies just to run rampant and make, incredible rate increases, which have been the largest cost driver really for condominiums balance sheets over the last several years. That's the biggest cost driver so far. And to be clear, the way that the language reads, what the law requires is that budgets that are going to be passed and are being passed now, these collections really don't begin until January of 26. So when we're all talking about a condo crisis and everybody's freaking out and people are being displaced, that's not related to the bill that we passed. That's related to insurance costs. And yeah, you have a lot of people that are freaking out because maybe they went 10, 15, 20, 30 years, some buildings in my district 40 years without reserving a dollar or a dime for necessary future repairs and replacements.
So what do we tell people who, again, feel like they can't even live in their own home because they can't afford it, especially people who come to Florida to retire, they're on a fixed income and now are being slapped with thousands and thousands of dollars and simply can't afford it? Will lawmakers do something to help them?
There's been this culture, this ethos in Florida, for too long, for more than a generation, where people come down here and they want to retire or they want to raise a family anywhere on the spectrum of ages and backgrounds, any type of product type in any location, come down here, and certainly as a condition of their loan, get home inspections. They inspect the appliances and the walls and the electrical work and the plumbing and all that stuff, but never thought to take a look at their building. Never actually wondered, what about the safety of their building, the condition of their building. And then I would argue that it's much more of an unfair surprise and a shock when 5 years pass, that same person, 10 years pass, and all of a sudden they're writing out and trying to beg, borrow, and steal to write out a huge check for a surprise assessment that comes when something really, really, really bad goes wrong. And really what our bills are doing is just doing a glide path and on an incremental basis to be able to put away and save.
Senator, we have to wrap up, unfortunately, but really quick, yes or no, will owners of condos feel relief here in Florida following this special session, following this legislative session?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up on the record, we sit down with an HOA president and insurance expert on how he says residents are responding to these high fees.
You're watching On the Record on WPBF 25.
Thanks for staying with us. We are continuing our discussion on rising HOA fees and the cost of owning a condo here in South Florida. I'm joined right now by Greg Buck. And Greg, you own a local insurance agency. You're also the president of your HOA. So we have lots to talk about here this morning. First, what are you hearing from owners in your HOA? What are they saying?
Well, we're probably just like 1,000 others in the state who are facing difficulties that were unseen 3 or 4 years ago, but now are at a point where they're in crisis. We're seeing our people who have lived there for 20 or 30 years who now are on fixed incomes of, let's say, $1,200 to $1,800, $2,000 a month, now being forced to pay over $1,000 a month in assessments. Assessments including the monthly fees and dues, but the insurance cost is at least half of that number.
I want to talk a little bit about insurance, Greg, because are insurance companies making a huge profit by writing these exaggerated, policies that they'll never have to pay claims on?
Well, that becomes the question, and it's you talk to 10 people and 5 may have a differing opinion, but from my perspective, the driving force of all of this is the reinsurance cost, and the reinsurance market drives the cost of insurance. When you look at the cost and whether the profitability is there for an insurance carrier, there has not been an insurance carrier in the homeowners market since 2017 that's made a profit. Okay, so there just is not, that's a non-existent thing that somebody might say, well, oh yeah, well, they're making so much money. Well, they're just not, because that reinsurance cost is the insurance company for the insurance carrier. And that's usually the Lloyd's of London's, the companies who are very large, Global XL, that will come out and they'll do a reinsurance contract with the insurance carriers, and that allows them to at least write the business. But at least, I think it's in the range of 60% of the costs are tied up in the reinsurance. So that leaves them basically using, the insurance carriers using their investments that they can set aside to make money. They're not making money off the insurance itself. And when we're looking at what's taking place, we're seeing these companies come in the state now, which basically they're called takeout companies, and they'll take you from Citizens. The problem is that they're an quantified unknown. We don't know what they're going to do or how they're going to act, because most of them have been put together with investment banking money. And we hope that they'll do well, but we just, 3 to 5 years out is when you're going to be able to know. And right now, since so many of them are just in the last year, we just don't have a clue.
And when it comes to HOAs, I know you can't speak for all of them, but in your particular experience, what are people saying? I mean, are people feeling desperate? Do they feel like they have to sell? Do they feel like they just can't make ends meet?
Yes, and in fact, I think this happened just over a year ago. One of the realtors that we work with stated that they had to actually physically pay for 20 people to move from their homes to a different state in order to make the transaction take place down here. So they were selling the home, but the people who were leaving ended up having to go to a different state. So this is what we're facing, is that where do people go? If you've got somebody that's on a fixed income and they're going to say, well, used to be you could move to Port St. Lucie or Fort Pierce or places like that, and the premiums would be a lot less for the insurance, and certainly the cost of the home seemed to be less. That's just not the case anymore. St. Lucie is one of the hottest markets out there.
And if you're dealing with HOAs and living in a condo, it's kind of the same story everywhere here in Florida.
It is. And especially the condo market. The condo market is an unknown, even still, as to where this is going to end up. I mean, you're looking at 20,000, I think the third quarter there was 20,000 units on the marketplace on average during that time, and 17,000 of those were 30 years and older. So about 80% plus. And so we're talking about something that we've not seen or experienced in our certainly, I've been here 40 years in Palm Beach County, and we've never seen anything close to this, and 30 years in the insurance business.
We're talking about relief, and so many condo owners hoping to see that relief, especially with the governor calling this special session and committees coming together to try and just help out with the situation that we're dealing with here in Florida. Do you think insurance is going to get worse now that we had Helene and Milton make their way through our area, just a few months ago?
I think that's going to tie to the reinsurance. I think that we are going to see some increases still. I think the average increase they planned for this year statewide was about 14%. I think that's Citizens' number, if I'm not mistaken. And if you're looking at a 14% increase, well, okay, if I paid $550 this year, I've got a 14% increase coming. That's a sizable increase. So I don't foresee that that's going to get necessarily better. And I think just cost of living increases of 5 or 6 or 8% for these companies is going to be, cost of living is not the right term, but basically they're going to have to increase their costs year on year. So I'm not sure that we're looking at something that we're going to see a reduction. I'm hoping the legislature is going to be very creative, because it's going to take creative processes to be able to accomplish the task. I know, like, for instance, last year they came out and offered $1 billion of reinsurance to the community. Well, if you think about $1 billion, that's not going to even cover one community in many cases. If you've got a large community of $1 million homes, that's very, very small number. So I don't think those numbers will help. But if there's some creativity in the way they create pools and or marketing, pools for the reinsurance, where they could drive the cost down, it may do some good, but it's going to be challenging.
And Greg, before we wrap up, you only have a few seconds left, but we spoke with State Senator Pizzo in our last segment. I asked him, yes or no, will condo owners see relief? He said yes. Do you feel confident in that?
Well, I have to see the idea. I'm not sure that I've seen anything to date that would make me feel better. And I can tell you that the people who are sitting on these condos that are 30 years old and trying to sell, we're talking about people who may be desperate because they can't afford, but desperate because, there will be people that come in and take these condos eventually. And it may be developers who want to buy the whole building,
right,
that kind of thing. But when you're talking about the average individual who's selling their condo unit, there's going to have to be something creative to buy a unit that's over 30 years old.
All right, thank you so much, Greg, for your time. Coming up here, still ahead, how those looking for a new home are reacting to these high fees. We sit down with a local real estate agent. Thanks for staying with us. I'm joined now by Nathaniel Crawford, a licensed real estate broker for our area. Nathaniel, thanks for being here with us. Of course, we're talking about what some have been calling a condo crisis here in Florida. I want to talk a little bit about all the condos that we're seeing going on the market. A lot of people feel like they just can't afford it anymore with all of the assessments and this new law that passed after Surfside. But some of those sales are so slow because I feel like you Google Florida condo and you see all this news come up about everything that's going on here in our state when it comes to fees. So what are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, we're seeing what I like to term sort of a tale of two cities. So the inventory that's older than 30 years, where you're seeing some pretty big assessments, is what's sitting on the market. The inventory that's younger than 30 years, there's actually very little of it, and prices are going up in that place because there's so much competition for that. So you have people who are becoming more and more motivated to sell because of these huge assessments, which means more people are putting properties on the market, which is putting downward pressure on those listing prices, while the newer stuff becomes more and more sexy because it doesn't come with the large assessments or lack of reserves in the buildings.
And probably more amenities than some of those older buildings have too. So when you take a look at that HOA fee, you're like, oh, I'm getting this, that, and that.
Exactly.
Where in the older buildings, you're not getting that. When it comes to people who are selling, you have some people that have lived in those older buildings for 30 years, 20 years, who obviously bought at a much lower price than what things are now. But then you have some people that bought maybe just 5 years ago, 10 years ago that might take a hit if they do sell now, or at least maybe not make a profit that they were looking for.
Yes, and that's part of the challenge. So when people bought into these beautiful buildings, not understanding or not being educated on, it really looked beautiful in their unit, but the structural integrity or the deferred maintenance wasn't a thing, until Surfside. So now a lot of that maintenance that had been put off now has to happen now because of the recent legislation. So you're getting these people who in some cases may have a ton of equity, and they're still taking a huge hit because they have an assessment. So you're selling a $500,000 unit with a $200,000 assessment. There's nowhere you can take that capital and go somewhere else to buy in South Florida.
And what does that look like to a client for you? If they're looking at a condo and they're like, hey, it's on the water, I like it, I can do this, but then they see that HOA fee. I mean, does that just kind of want to turn people away?
It depends. So in what we're seeing more now is a lot of sellers are just having to sort of eat the cost. They're having to cover those assessments in the transaction of selling the unit. And that obviously eats into a ton of their equity, but they're in a position where they're sort of having to choose the lesser of two evils. Do we keep holding this unit and see how we can pay this assessment on our fixed income? Or do we sell and pay the assessment out of the proceeds of the sale, which gives the buyer a very good unit? So,
I saw a listing the other day that said $30,000 in credit at time of sale to be able to help with those assessments moving forward. Is that a tactic that works?
It does, depending on the building. So there are a lot of variables there, but a lot of the buildings that are now in a place where they know what exactly needs to be done, and some of them don't have huge assessments. Most of the assessments I've seen are around that $30,000 to $60,000 mark. There are some out there that are huge just because they haven't maintained for a long time. And in those cases, that is a big boon to someone who's being able to say, well, I can buy this unit and I'm not on the hook for the assessment that everyone else is on the hook for. So it gives them a ton of upside. So there are scenarios where a buyer and a seller may be in a good place because they're motivated to leave. They have enough equity that they can make that capital contribution or make that contribution to the assessment and still be able to move. And most times they're not moving to South Florida. They're leaving somewhere else.
What do you think happens next? I mean, this is a place that so many people come to retire.
Yes.
If you're on a fixed income, this makes it very difficult for you to own a condo right now. So where do we go from here?
I think Florida is sort of transitioning to a retirement state, but a more expensive retirement state. So the reality is that there are a lot of people who came here believing that South Florida was their forever home, and that's not going to be the case. Because the assessments that they're facing, they can't afford on that fixed income, and the proceeds from the sale of that unit won't allow them to continue to live in the same areas that they're living in. So that may result in more traffic in, say, the Orlandos or the Jacksonvilles. And in some cases, people are leaving the state entirely.
Nathaniel, thank you so much for your perspective this morning. We really appreciate it. On the Record, we'll be right back after this. Thank you for making us a part of your morning. As always, we encourage you to be part of our discussion each and every Sunday right here at 10 a.m. Until then, you can watch this morning's On the Record on every episode on our website, WPBF.com, and our free WPBF 25 News app. Matter of Fact with Soledad O'Brien is next. We'll see you again next Sunday.